And so because of that, you had this personality on offense that was being led by Coach Dicka and Jim McMahon. But then on the defensive side, it all started with Buddy Ryan. And that's the one thing you knew about the defense. The defense was run by Buddy Ryan. The way he called the defense, the way he prepared the defense, the way he prepared his game plans, and then the way he got us to execute it. Buddy was a tremendous motivator as well. Mike Ditka was one of the best motivators I've ever been around. Buddy had his way of motivation. He challenged you. He put it on you. He got you to recognize and realize what your strengths and weaknesses were very quickly. And again, Buddy was a military man, served in Korea. And so a lot of the way he handled us as players was how he handled his soldiers when he was in Korea as well.
Let me give you a couple names and tell me the most impressionable thing about them. Mike Singletary.
Oh, intense. Intense about everything he did. Mike did things at a very high level intentionally. He's a very, very bright, thoughtful, hardworking man.
Dan Hampton.
Probably one of the greatest natural athletes that didn't look like an athlete. He was this big, lumbering guy. But when you watched him play, you watched how explosive he was, how strong he was, naturally strong. And that was one of the things about who Dan was.
You know, the great personality, and I had him on the show a number of times, Steve McMichael.
Oh, Ming the Merciless.
That's it.
Great teammate. This is why I believe he got into the Hall of Fame. And I can remember Dan Pompei doing an article about Steve and why Steve belonged in the Hall of Fame. And he and I had this conversation during the interview. And I said to him, the thing about Steve that everybody has to recognize and realize is he's got the defensive tackle he played next to him, and Dan Hampton is a Hall of Famer. The defensive end that played outside of him is a Hall of Famer. And the middle linebacker is a Hall of Famer. And people say, well, yeah, see, he played around a lot of great players. No. Sometimes you need a player that is best for the team, a guy that helps elevate everybody else's performance. But if you look at his own stats, like he's one of the top leading sackers as a defensive tackle. He played almost the longest as a defensive tackle in the league. He had a tremendous career that tells you he deserves to be in it, but he got overlooked because of the people that were around him. So when he finally got in, it was an amazing thing, but deservedly so. I mean, I'm one of those that firmly believe that he should have been in sooner just because of his own individual records, but the fact that he made us all better. When Mike Singletary got hurt, he missed 2 games his entire career as our starting middle linebacker for Chicago Bears. I'm the only other guy to start. And in both those games, I led the team in tackles. Was I a great player? I was a good player. I really was. I don't know if I was a great player. I was a good player. I understood the game. But I know that because the guys that were in front of me, because of Dan Hampton, but mostly because of Steve McMichael, I was able to do my job and lead the team in tackles. I was able to replace Mike Singletary to the point where we didn't miss him. That's because of the guys that were around me. They played and they made me better.
You know, when I think of the great teams and the successful ones, complimentary is the word that comes to mind.
Yes. Yes, that's the right word. And if you wanted to use that for a Steve McMichael, you would be right on because he was a very complimentary player.
The 46-10 win, I was on the field the day before the game where you guys went through the workout and everything, and I watched both the teams. And I knew at that moment that this was going to be a blowout. There was something about the way you all presented yourself in that practice, and then not that New England, wasn't a solid team. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, because exactly where you were going with this was we had attitude. To me, attitude is one of the most important things that you can have. Anytime when you look at things and perceive things, your attitude dictates how you're going to do things. We used to get off the bus. That defense would get off the bus, and we were already up by 7 points. The ball hadn't even been kicked off. That was our attitude. That's how good we were. And for that one period, that 1 year in 1985, when we got off the bus, we felt like we were up.
After you retired, you did become a coach, and it was with Philadelphia. You were there. Andy Reid was the head coach. You all went to 3 NFC championship games, I believe.
Yes.
And what did you learn from that experience that helped you along the way?
Oh, I learned so many great lessons from Andy. People don't understand, but if you go back and you follow coaching trees. Again, Andy's coaching tree works all the way back, connects to Bill Walsh. Okay. And Andy had a way of doing things, just like Coach Walsh did. He had something he believed in, and that's the way he did it. Well, Andy was the same way. Andy had something he believed in. Again, he worked for Mike Holmgren. Mike Holmgren worked for Bill Walsh. What Andy did more so than anything else that I will always appreciate was he taught me how to take ownership as a coach, how to make decisions and own the decisions. I had a situation with one of my linebackers, with Jeremiah Trotter, and I went to Andy and said, "Hey, Coach, I got this issue, this problem, blah, blah." He looks at me and goes, "Ron, take care of it. Come back to me later and let's talk about how you handled it. And we'll go from there." I said, "Sure, great." So I went back, talked to Trot, got things settled down. We went about the day, had a good practice. Later that afternoon, I went into Coach's office. We sat down, and he said, "Well, so Ron, how'd you handle it?" "Well, I did this, this, and this, Coach." And he goes, "That's good. Hey, how about this? What if you had him do this, this, and this?" I said, "I didn't think of it." He says, "Ron, sometimes, okay, as you think through things, there's sometimes other answers that may be better. Your answer is not a bad answer, but there might be a better one." It's the same thing with calling plays. People don't understand. There's not a bad call, okay? There can be a better call, but execution will determine whether or not it's a good or bad call.
We almost have to go to another break, but I will tell you, I have lived by this. 2 and 2 is 4, but so is 3 and 1. So is 1 and 3. All I care about is 4.
Mm-hmm. Get to the answer.
Yeah. Yes. When you got the head coaching job at Carolina, what were you prepared for that? Were you ready to be a head coach?
I would like to believe I was, but I learned quickly I wasn't because I needed a little bit of help.
And what help did you turn to?
Well, it was interesting because my first 2 years, I really didn't have anybody to rely on. I didn't have a former head coach on my staff. So what I did was, after my second season, I had this record of being 3-13 and games decided by 7 points or less, by score, basically. Well, at the end of the year, my first year, I did a whole review with the ownership. The second year, I did the same thing, sat down and did this entire review with Jerry Richardson, the former owner. When we finished the interview, and I said, "Look, this is how I want to finish this. This is how I want to get better this year. This is how we can improve the team. We can work on the coaching like this. But I got to ask you one more thing, Mr. Richardson, that is, I need to develop myself, okay? I would like your permission to reach out to John Madden and ask him if he would not mind mentoring me." And at the time, I was on the Madden committee, but I wanted to have a formal relationship more than just, working on his committees. And so the owner, Jerry Richardson, he starts laughing a little bit, reaches in his coat pocket, pulls out this index card and slides it to me. Tells me, "Pick it up, look at it." I picked it up, looked at it, and it was John Madden's phone number. He said, "Ron, you and I are thinking alike on this. You do need a little bit of help, and I think Coach Madden's the perfect guy. He's waiting for your phone call."
Ron Rivera is with us. We're going to talk a little bit longer about his pro career as a coach, and then we're going to be talking about the University of California football team. He's in charge of it now, and we'll talk about that, and also the changes in college football. Both of us have seen a lot of changes, and I still shake my head when I think about athletes getting paid. Not that they don't deserve it, but thinking about it anyway. We do that as we continue across the country and around the world. Good to have you with us on America's sports talk show, Sports Byline. Great segment. That's a great story.
That's how I got my nickname, Riverboat Ron.
Well, that was the one thing I wanted to ask you about, because you changed philosophy.
Yes.
You went from being conservative to being Riverboat Ron.
Yeah. But the truth is, it wasn't going from conservative to being this wild.
No.
No. What it really was, though, it was the realization of the lesson he taught me. And that was, I wasn't doing what was right. I was doing what was safe.
That's it.
Being conservative as a coach is being safe.
Yeah.
Being a guy that looks at the situation, looks at the circumstances, and says, right now, my team is playing better than their team. I'm going for it on 4th and 1. Okay? Right now, my punter is punting the ball better than anybody. He's going to pin them back. We're on 4th and 1. I'm going to have him pin them back. We'll get the ball back in better position, and we'll score.
Yeah.
That's the difference. I learned that because of him, and I did this. I did that in the same year in 2013. I did that where one time I went for it and the other time I didn't. And it's funny. In both situations, I get criticized. First time I do it, I get criticized for going for it on 4th and 1 twice during the opening drive, but yet we scored the touchdown and win the game. The next time I do the opposite, we're playing New Orleans, and it's a chance to put ourselves in position to win the division, or if we lose, New Orleans clinches. So it's the fourth quarter. We're driving, they stop us. Now we're right around midfield, 4th and about a yard and about 2 yards to go. I said, let's punt. We punt, get the ball down there inside them, get the ball back, score the touchdown to win the game, knock them out of the division championship. We win the division championship the next week. So, and the press conference, everything was great. It's a good story. If you want, I'll tell the story on
I want to get into the Cal thing, so I'll leave some time, but we'll talk a little bit more about and I remember I was doing Stanford. They played Boston College and had beaten Boston College, so I came down to New York for the Jets game with Stanford. Bill Walsh was the coach. Joe Montana had just been drafted. Steve DeBerg was the quarterback. And so anyway, they're on the 3-yard line, and that's when Steve had the laryngitis, and they fixed his helmet so that the players could hear him calling the thing. The first play from the 3, don't get anything. Second play, they don't. Steve's pointing to his helmet, like something's wrong with it. So he goes off. Joe comes on. Joe takes the ball, does that sweep around the side and goes in. They win the ball game. Nothing was wrong with DeBerg's helmet. That was a planned thing to do. Yeah.
Wow.
That's the way Bill was, dictating that, just like you said, dictating the tempo and going for it. You got it. And when you said be true to yourself, your consistency, that goes back to that as well, Ron.
Yep.
So, I mean, it was just unbelievable. Okay, here we go. Last segment. Ron Rivera is with us. I want to find this note first. Here we go. Ron Rivera is with us here on Sports Byline. First of all, let me say congratulations. New inductee into the Hispanic Football Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
Mean a lot to you?
It does. It means a tremendous amount. Mostly because, being Latino, being Hispanic, I'm playing a game that's truly American. But at the same time, just kind of being a trailblazer, being somebody of my ethnicity, being able to compete and play at a high level, both collegiately and then in the NFL, made me a role model. And it was a responsibility I truly took very, very seriously. And I knew that to be able to be accepted, I had to be good. So I practiced hard in college. I really did. Even to the point where some of my teammates ridiculed me. And it's basically, trying to be a weekday All-American, trying to be a Wednesday All-American. Well, kind of the joke was on them because eventually I became an All-American. And I think a lot of it had to do was my approach because I had to prove I belonged.
You made an adjustment during your pro coaching career in the NFL. And I found it fascinating because in those early games that I would see you coaching, I thought to myself, go for it or do something different. Give them something to look at that they don't expect. And you eventually made the change. What caused that change?
My relationship with Coach Madden. When I reached out to Coach and he became my mentor, one of the things he said to me is, I understand you are 3-13 in games decided by 7 points or less. He said, go back and look at those games and see what you could have done differently. Well, again, I assumed, hey, this is homework. He wanted me to do a report. So I wrote this 20-page report about the game, the situation, the circumstances for those 13 games we lost. And so I fly out, I see Coach. I come over here to Pleasanton, go to Red Bear Ventures, his company. We sit down in his office. We have this great conversation. Then I bring up the report, and I said, here, I got this report that you want me to write. He goes, what report? I said, well, being 3-13. What should I have done differently? He says, well, that's not for me. That's for you. What do you think happened? And I said, well, this instance, we were up by 3. I kicked a field goal to go up by 10, and it was 4th and 1, a long 1.5 on their 30, and I kicked a field goal instead of going for the first down to clinch it. He goes, exactly. He goes, Ron, think about it. And I did. So I went to another game. I said, well, here we had a 6-point lead, and we were right around their 40-yard line. And I punted to get them in, a coffin corner kick, the whole bit. They drive down, scored a touchdown, kicked the extra point, and beat us. He says, what could you have done different? I said, I could have gone for it. And he goes, well, why didn't you? I said, well, I was going by the book. He looked